Okay, so this is the second part of the first for the AI 900 fundamentals workshop. We have covered a few concepts, including computer vision, and now we'll be talking about NLP. Now, when we talk about NLP, that is natural language processing, any interaction with the human in form of text or audio where a human is trying to communicate with the system either by typing in some information or by talking to the system, it is considered a part of the natural language processing. Now, within Azure, we have 4 services that support NLP. In the exam, you would have questions like where they'll be giving you a scenario and they'll be asking you a question that according to you, what do you think will be the best service for this specific scenario? For example, if you have a scenario where you need someone talking in English to communicate to someone talking in French, or if the use case is to take the input in English and give the output in French, or take the input in Spanish, give the output in maybe, let's say, another language that is supported, we could be using the speech service. So there are 4 services that you should be knowing about: the language, translator, speech, and Azure bot. When we talk about the language service, this service is used to access features for understanding and analyzing the text, which is used for training models that can understand spoken or text-based commands and building intelligent applications. An example of this would be if we have some custom commands that we do not want to give in a language. So let's say you're creating an application where you want a word which is not an English word, which is not a Latin word, which is not a Spanish word. Maybe you want to have a different word or a different sound associated with certain action that you want to perform. So that is one use case where you could be using the language service, because you will be building your own model and this model will understand the spoken or text-based commands. For example, if we are training a bot, let's say we are making a customer service bot. So we need to train a bot with the kind of input the customers might be, giving in. And depending upon the input, the bot will try to analyze what is the context that the customer is trying to speak. And by analyzing the context, the bot will be able to answer give, a viable solution. That's what is covered in the language service. Moving on, in the translator service, we use this service to translate text between more than 60 languages. So you want to translate from one language to the other, just the way we have seen Google Translate, we have a similar offering in Azure called Translator. Now, some of you might ask, where is this important? For example, if we are building an application on Azure, and for that application, we want to give dual language support, right? Let's say if my language is selected as English and Gautam wants to write a comment in French, and we want the application to automatically convert the French to English if someone's preference is English. So for that, we might be using a translator service within Azure itself. So let's say if our entire infrastructure was in Azure, we were using Azure virtual machines, we were using a MySQL database on Azure, and then we wanted to add this language capabilities, it will be a good idea to use them with Azure because, as you know, we did discuss this in AZ900. It is easier for resources to communicate to each other when they are on the same cloud platform. So that is something which could be done, and they could be managed from the very same console. So this could be a use case when you want translation from one language to the other, translation of comments, translation of speech. That's where you could be using the translator service. Now, next comes the speech service. We use the service to recognize and synthesize speech and to translate spoken languages. Now, you'll see some services are overlapping, right? You could be translating using a translator. You could be translating using speech. This is something which is very important from the exam standpoint of view. In most of the cases, when we use a translator service, we are translating from one language to the other. That has something to do with, a textual input, and we get back a textual output. Whereas when we compare this to the speech service, we use the service to recognize and synthesize speech. Synthesize is when text is converted into speech and it sounds very human-like. Okay, so there is a language called as SSML, Speech Synthesis Markup Language. It's not a part of the certification, but let's say if you want to create an experience, you want, the voice to have some pause, you want the voice to have a high pitch, a low pitch, focus on some words, just the way humans do, and not sound robotic. You can use speech synthesis markup language, which will allow you to have pauses, which will allow you to have certain human features to the voice that you would be generating out of the speech service. In general, if you want to translate spoken languages, so if two people are talking, so let's say if you want to translate the spoken words in real time, you can be using speech service. If you are looking with text, you will be using the translator service. So let me make this a point. Whenever you want to translate text, you can use the translator. Whenever you want to translate speech, you're going to use the speech. Speech also has other advantages like text to speech and speech to text. So that is something which you could do. So recognize it's speech to text and synthesizes text to speech. If this makes sense to you, give me a thumbs up. Okay. Not a lot of you are active. Okay. Coming back, the next is the Azure bot service. So this service provides a platform for conversational AI, the capability of a software agent to participate in a conversation. Developers can use the bot framework to create a bot and manage it with the bot service. Integrating backend services like language and connecting to channels for web chat, email, Microsoft Teams, and others is also possible in the Azure bot. From the exam standpoint of view, please remember that the Azure bot service can be integrated to language. It could be connected with the web chat, the email, the Microsoft Teams extensions, and many other. So bot services, for example, I open a website, I want to start a conversation, and the website gives me certain messages. Like at the bottom right of the screen, please click here to talk to one of the agents. So previously there used to be chat agents that used to be active throughout, but now to reduce the cost, to reduce the workload, a lot of organizations have moved to this model where they have the chatbot which is listening to your request. And once the chatbot is done analyzing what your request is, depending upon the severity of the request, depending upon if the question could be answered as a frequently asked question, the request is then transferred accordingly. So it is going to do the analysis that, hey, I see a request coming in. Now I see that the request is for, let's say, booking a flight. I think this is generating revenue. Please immediately answer to it. So they can connect to someone who can answer. Okay, I think this is about a feedback. So you can maybe just go to the feedback page. We'll get back. It's not so urgent. So organizations are cutting down on cost by using the Azure bot service, because the bot will, carry out a conversation to someone. It might seem like, the conversation is going good. It's going interactive. They can pass in their information. And then the bot is going to make a decision on if it needs to pass some things to, OpenAI or not. So, Steve, to answer your question, OpenAI is not, it's not, I'll say the NLP part in Azure, this has been long existing services, and OpenAI's involvement with Microsoft is pretty recent. It's not very old. So that is something different. We'll come to that. That is more of OpenAI, where AI can carry out conversations. In Azure bot, it is still rule based. You kind of have the rules. You train your bot what is the question and how do you have to answer it. So Azure bot can carry very simple conversations like yes no based questions. So for example, if you have to fill a form, it could maybe conversationally ask you to fill up a form. But if you ask it something which is for which it has not been trained, it will not give you a response to that. So it's a very, very small use case. Whereas OpenAI is conversational, it is very broad. You can talk to it about a lot more than what you could be doing for bot. Bot is very, very specific to a use case. For example, if we have a bot on, recently I was booking a flight with Air France. So because it was 11 already, 11 p.m. Montreal time. So the call centers, the centers do not like, there's help support does not work from 11 p.m. to some time in the morning. I don't remember the exact time, but I wanted to book that flight at the very same moment. So what I did was I used the bot service. I don't know if it was Azure or some other service, but I used the Air France bot. They might be using any service in the background. I'm not sure about that. They could be using AWS Lex, they could be using Azure bot, they could have something custom, or maybe something else on the cloud provider. So that bot was asking me questions like, enter your, destination, enter what day you want to fly. So it was conversational, but I could not tell it, I could not write a story because it will not understand, because it was giving me formats. Hey, please tell me when do you want to fly? YYYYMMDD format. If I put in something else, there'll be a validation that will kick in that will tell me this is incorrect. But it is not something which can handle something which it has not been trained for. So if studying this from the exam standpoint of view for all of you, you need to know these four services exist in NLP when it comes to Azure: language, translator, speech, and Azure bot. Language is whenever you want to understand what the user is saying, you want to train your model, you want to have something custom. It could be spoken or text, you can use the language service. When you want to translate text from one language to the other, and it is text, not speech, you use the translator. For translating speech, for understanding speech, for synthesizing speech. Synthesizing is generating speech from text that you enter, you use the speech service. And for a chatbot experience, you use the Azure bot. I guess this is pretty straightforward. At any point of time, if anyone has any questions, raise your hand. I'll be happy to answer. Next is knowledge mining in Azure. Knowledge mining extracts information from unstructured data to create a searchable knowledge store. Azure Cognitive Search is an enterprise search solution that uses AI capabilities for knowledge mining on documents. It can build indexes for internal or public-facing content and extract insights quick from large amounts of data, including previously unsearchable documents. So let's say if you have, unstructured data. For example, let's say we work at a law firm. We have got case files of the past 10 years. Let's say we have, more than 15,000 printed documents. We could scan all of them, or, they could be digital form in a digital format. We have all of them, but we cannot search through them, right? For example, if I want to know, let's say what happened on 2022, January 1st. So I cannot search for a date altogether inside each and every document. I do not have a searchable index, right? I might have 1,000 files, 1,500 files, 2,000 files, maybe, even 10,000 files. I would manually have to go and search in each one of them. Otherwise, there's no way of knowing if for a very large data set, what is existing inside each and every, document. So when you use the knowledge mining, it is indexing your data. It knows what it is, gaining the knowledge out of that data. So now when you ask it 2022 January 1st, if it 2022 January 1st is a date that is present in 5 documents, it's going to present that data to you. It can be your own search. It can be your own search index that you could use to find data out of the documents that you have. So that's what you need to know from the exam standpoint of view. Now comes the important part. So now the topic that I'm going to begin is of a high weightage for the certification. That is the challenges and risks with AI. This is where I'll be talking about what is a responsibility model as a consumer of AI. What are we expected to follow, and why is that so? So starting with challenges and risks with artificial intelligence, AI can bring significant benefits to society, but it also poses challenges and risks that need to be addressed. We all know that because, you might have seen some movies in the past where you might have seen AI getting out of control and AI trying to, uh, overpower humans. That is something which, you know, is debatable if it's there in the near future or not. Not getting into that, sticking to, the content for the certification. I personally feel that when we are using AI for decision making, there are a lot of risks with it. For example, if we are trusting a human life by letting a car drive on its own, we need to be sure that AI will be, robust enough, AI will be trained enough. For example, if we have more and more test data and nothing wrong happens, if the probability of something happening is very, very, very minute, as I always say, in terms of security, in terms of risk, you can never say anything is risk free, because you never know when something new might come up. Similarly with AI, we do not know, but as of now, AI, let's say in a self-driving car, might be working perfectly, but then there are accidents that do happen, right? That doesn't mean that we can stop using it. That doesn't mean we should start using more of it. That only means we can improve it with time. Like for example, even if we have, a self-drive mode, having an actual driver to take control, to override the control, is what a lot of car manufacturers give us, just in case, to be sure, because no one wants to be the one who wants the risk on their, on their plate. And that's why it's very important to be aware of the risk and to try to mitigate them. You cannot always mitigate them, but try and come as close to, reducing the risks that you can get. That's what is the aim when we build something in artificial intelligence. So the potential challenges and risk include the bias, errors, data exposure, limited applicability, trust issues, and liability concerns. I'm going to explain each one of them very briefly. Bias, you might have seen certain, when we have AI for loan assignment. Now, this happened for a few financial institutions. So where AI got really biased. So AI started discriminating people. So whenever you build AI, you should make sure that you try to keep it as fair as possible so that it is not taking any biases when it's making a decision. Otherwise, it's not the best thing to go forward with. People will feel that they've been excluded and they will stop using the product. Error is something we try to avoid. For example, if a self-driving car is driving, we do not want it to stop in the middle of the road. Something that happened with me, that is error. We should try to avoid them as much as possible. Next is data exposure. Certain times what happens is, since, if you leave AI on its own, if it is searching for knowledge on its own, it might be slightly possible that it might start leaking your data. So it is very important to contain it. For example, um, a very good use case of this will be, let's say this is our organization, this is the firewall. And this firewall is what someone needs to access the internet. You need to go through this. If we restrict the traffic of AI, let's say, AI is expanding within the network, it is learning more and more things from the network. We need to have a way that it can it can ingest the knowledge, but at the same time, it does not spill out the secrets. It does not spill out the personal data that we have. We might be training it on our data. As long as it is within the firm boundaries or within our boundaries, it's fine. We do not want this data to be going out, and that's why it's always a good practice to have multiple layers of firewall, so that you can have rules that your data does not accidentally leak out. Because if that happens, you will have exposure which could be potentially dangerous. And at certain times, if you lose the trust, your organization might not be able to carry the business as it was carrying before. Limited applicability is, when you're building AI, you need to be keeping into mind what are the use cases, so that it could be applied to a lot of use cases. I think this is one issue that is getting solved with time. So with more and more applications, being able to connect to each other a lot, we see a very connected future in IT. So applicability, as long as the AI that you're building for, as long as the cause is something which is going to be in demand, applicability, from the connection standpoint of view, integration standpoint of view, is not so much of a concern with more and more connected technologies being, used on a day-to-day basis. Trust issues, humans do not want to trust AI fully, and that's why we do not see everything autonomous. We do not see, self-driving cars everywhere in the city. there are rules. I'm not exactly sure of how the rules work out, but as far as I know, at least in Canada, if someone is using a self-driving car, they still need to be there at the driver's seat. So we are not trusting, right? If there was full trust, we would have been like, hey, take me somewhere. And I'm not even sitting on the driver's seat, but that's not how it works. Correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I know, even if you're driving, a self-driving car, you need to be there on the driving seat and you need to take control in case something wrong happens. You cannot be sleeping. You cannot just not be paying attention. You have to pay attention because at the end of the day, it is the driver's responsibility to take care of the vehicle. And then there are liability concerns. So certain lines of business which have sensitive data, such as healthcare data, financial data, or data that can be very, very critical, like personally identifiable information, you do not want to hand it all to AI because then that's a liability concern as well. No one wants to take responsibility if something wrong happens at the end of the day. To ensure responsible AI development and use, it is crucial to mitigate these threats and ensure that AI benefits all individuals and communities fairly. So fairness is something which we'll be talking about. It's a very important thing when we talk about, how questions are asked in the exam. Let me see, I have something in the chat. If it is relevant, does ChatGPT DAN prompt goes under trust issue? Uh, Jatin, can you share the full form of DAN? I'm not sure about that. Maybe I'm missing on something. I'll answer your question in the chat. Just put that out and I'll answer it in a while after completing this slide.
Okay.
Okay. So Microsoft has established a set of 6 principles that guide the development and deployment of AI software. These principles are, so please listen to this very carefully. This is something which we all need to know. Again, from, for Microsoft wants you to know them before you start working on AI. So once I was creating this cognitive engine before the break, as an example, it asked me to click on, that I have read the terms. So these are what the terms are, and we should all be knowing about them. From exam standpoint of view, very important. They're definitely going to be asking you about this. The first is fairness. You want your AI to be fair. You do not want it to have any bias. The second is reliability and safety. You want your AI that you have created to be reliable. It should not break. It should not have, you should test it as much as you can so that it is safe, it is tested. It is not something which is very preliminary given out to the world. And that's why you would see we have beta versions, right? We give out beta versions for testing. People test them, people give the feedback, and depending upon inculcating the feedback, we then go into full production. So even today, I'm quite sure many of us have used ChatGPT. You will see when we started using ChatGPT, how many of you did notice that there was something called as a beta version? Raise your hand or just give me a thumbs up. Just want to know how many of you, are connected to the field, how many of you are active on all of this. How many of you did realize, if you ever used ChatGPT, that we were using the beta version initially? Quite a few. Okay, you can lower your hands. Thank you. So yeah, so basically, yes, what happens is before putting anything in production, organizations want a lot of test data. That's why they give stuff to people for free, go test it out. They do not give you any warranty against that, right? So you can play around with it. It might give you the right information, it might not give you the right information. Use it as much as you want to, and then you take the decision if that was helpful for you or not. If it was, you could continue using it. If you feel that it wasn't, you could maybe, stop using it. And then it improves with time. And then once, people have tested it out, you've got free people. It's good for people because it's free. It's good for you because you have tested it. Eventually you could go ahead and you could sell it out. Yeah. So coming back, privacy and security. So you want your data not to be leaked. You do not want your data to escape a lot of environments. And for that reason, you want to make sure that you're following the right privacy. You're not exposing personally identifiable information. Your data is not being attacked easily. So that is another, concept that you have to be aware about. Inclusiveness is, you could be fair, but you could not be inclusive. These are two different things. Inclusive is considering not just considering the majority, but also considering everyone apart from that. So if let's say if 100 people if there are 100 people in a room, out of which 90 have one trait and the 10 others have different traits, you could not say that your AI is supporting 90. It should supporting be all the 100. It should be inclusive. Obviously anything cannot be 100% secure, it could not be 100% safe, it cannot be 100% fair, it cannot be 100% inclusive, but you have to try to get as close as you can to to being as inclusive as possible. At the same time, you want to be transparent, you do not want to hide. Reason being because here the computer is making decisions, so you have to be sure that your your steps, your processes are shared, right? So if someone wants to audit them, they should be able to do it. Let's say if there is some part of your training model that is making your system bias, if it is transparent, it could be highlighted, it could be rectified. But if you try to hide it away, definitely there might be something fishy going out there, which which makes your AI not transparent. Obviously, does not mean that you expose your code, but that does mean that you let people know how you are making sure that the other steps are being inculcated. And then the last is accountability. So if you're creating anything, you have to be 100% accountable for it. You have to have clear documentation around it. Whose responsibility is it? For example, just a rough example: if someone's driving a Tesla and if something goes wrong, who's responsible? The company, the software, the person who was there at the driver's seat? The answer to that is it depends, because then they have something, when they built AI, they have accountability. So they take care some part of the, they'll make sure that their software is as accurate as possible. But at the same time, the person needs to make sure that, the advice is being followed, the maintenance is done, the updates are pulled in, and you are following all the user guidelines that you have to. Yes, Chatin, go ahead.
Can you please touch again on the privacy and security part?
So privacy and security would be, for example, let's say if you have something stored in, let's say if you have a bot that is analyzing data for you and it is communicating with the internet to gain its intelligence or improve its intelligence. Let's say the bot, you have to design your bot in a way, you have to design your solution in a way
I'm
that
sorry
would
to
take.
interrupt. Sorry, I read it wrong. I wanted to know more on reliability and safety, not privacy security. Sorry for
Okay,
that.
okay, okay. So reliability and safety is, if you have a solution, you test it multiple times before you can say that it is ready to be out in production. So let's say with AI, you cannot be sure how well it's going to perform in the real world, but doing extensive testing, doing boundary value analysis, using user acceptance testing, using black box testing, using white box testing, using everything that you can in your capability to be sure that your solution is ready to be interacting with the world. Because when you talk about AI, there might be real people who are involved with the interaction, and you're very closely impacting what they think, what they do, what's happening to them. So it's very, very important that your solution is reliable, and at the very time it is at the very same time it is safe. Safety is something which comes into play when we look at self-driving cars, or bots or machineries that are taking decisions. For example, safety would be, uh, you know this is something which is not very common, but there was a company I was reading about a few years ago that was building offensive solutions. So let's say if someone tries to break in into your house, it will detect, and then it might just spray some water, or it might just cage someone in, and do some preventive measures or some offensive measures to stop, to contain the person. So let's say if you have AI along associated with this, so the AI is making a decision if someone is broken in or not. So in that case, you have to make sure that it is safe, it is not harming someone, it is not life threatening for someone, it is reliable, it will be there when you need it, and at the same time it is not going to be hurting someone. Let's say if it's a smart car, you want to be sure it is safe so that it does not automatically start and crashing into people, because smart cars are connected to the internet. Smart cars, self-driving cars, have the capability to drive on itself. You do not want them to be hacked it'll be very weird, right? If someone's sitting over here, let's say my Tesla is in my parking lot, though I don't own one, just giving an example, being very hypothetical. So let's say my Tesla is in my parking lot, someone hacks it and it starts moving automatically. That'll be weird. I mean, you go to YouTube, you'll see all those crazy stories around so many cars, being controlled and being hacked and a lot of stuff happening. But coming back, so when you are building AI, you have to be sure that it is safe, it is reliable, it is not getting carried away. No one is able to pursue it. No one is able to, uh, bypass the security measures that you have put into place. And that only comes with extensive testing. Answers your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Okay, going forward, these are the descriptions of each one of them. Again, very important from exam standpoint of view. Fairness. So Microsoft's AI development principles prioritize fairness, demonstrating using Azure machine learning to identify and mitigate bias in loan approval models and the removal of facial recognition capabilities that could result in discrimination or unfair treatment. This has happened in the past. Certain people were not recognized, certain people were not issued the loans, and then Microsoft did take this up very very seriously, where it wants people to have, whoever's building AI, at least on their platform, it should not be having any biases. Fairness is one of the principles that is taken into consideration when they build the models for us, and if we have our models, this is something which we have to be careful about. Next is reliability and safety. AI systems must be reliable and safe, especially in critical applications like autonomous vehicles and medical diagnosis. So something which I was talking about. Let's say AI is being used in medical. I did not give the medical example, so I'll talk about it right now. So AI is being used in a lot of medical applications. Let's say if AI is performing an operation and suddenly it gets confused that, hey, I don't know what to do. You cannot stop an operation at the middle of it, right? So your system should be tested, extensively tested. That's the only way to gain reliability and safety. That's all you could do. And then you can have very high standards. So if your AI is not passing that, let it not do it at all, because you do not want it to be life threatening for anyone. That's why rigorous testing and development management processes are necessary to ensure that AI applications function as expected and minimize risk to human life. Exactly the same things that I was talking about. Privacy and security. AI systems must respect privacy and be secure in the handling of large volume of data that may contain personal details. Privacy and security must be considered throughout the development and deployment stages as the system continues to use new data to make predictions or take actions that are subject to privacy or security concerns. You are getting data along with time, right? You do not want data leakage. If you have data leakage, that means that, let's say, let me give you an example. You have deployed your AI model on a machine, and the same virtual machine is being used for some other task. Someone might be able to gain, if they're using the same resource, they might be able to gain information from your AI. So your AI has to be capable enough that if a lot of data is getting ingested into the AI, it should be prepared on how to handle it, how to secure it, how to, what kind of data is accessible by who, so that it does not end up exposing the data. Inclusiveness. AI systems should be designed to empower and engage all people, regardless of differences such as physical ability, gender, ethnicity, or other factors. So these are the factors for which we should be careful about. Uh, Physical ability, gender, ethnicity, and other factors, obviously, as well. You cannot make something which is, you cannot say that this thing is only going to work for certain people. In that case, it violates the policy. It's not something which is appreciated. And I'm not saying it'll be taken down immediately, but it is something. If you look at the policy, as per the policy, you shouldn't be building something which is not inclusive. So you should try to make your system as inclusive as possible to cover as, like, I won't say 100% again, because it is not possible. There are many situations where it is not possible, but you should try to the to best of your abilities to make your system as inclusive as possible. Because at certain points, I know there's a break point, so you might not be able, where cost overpowers that. For example, if I'm building a solution, I would want it to have a lot of features. But let's say if I have a budget constraint, I can only make it inclusive enough so that it has so and so features. Certain features might include, for example, giving text support, voice support. So for someone who's visually impaired, let's say we want the system to have text to speech, but then at the same time text to speech comes with money as well, right? You need to invest money into getting that thing done, and you might have budget constraints. And that's why I always say try to make it as inclusive as possible. It is practically impossible to make it 100% inclusive, but try and build it with as to the best of your capabilities. That's what I can say in a general and a practical sense. AI should bring benefits to all parts of the society and help promote inclusion and equality. So definitely you should have inclusion, you should have equality. In the real world, I will say, theoretically 100% is what we want. Practically, try to make it as much as possible. Transparency, already talked about this. I'll briefly talk it out again. So AI systems should be designed to be understandable to users, including clear explanations of the system's purpose, how it works, and any expected limitations it might have. This will help to build trust in the technology and ensure that the users can make informed decision about its use. So basically, tell the people technology is new. You do not want someone to feel, you know, cheated after using a product. So let them know what the product is. Let them make the decision on if they want to use it or not. Moving on, accountability. People should be accountable for AI systems, and designers and developers of AI systems must work within a framework of governance and organizational principles to ensure that solutions meet ethical and legal standards. So ethical standards are, you do not want to misuse someone's data. You do not want to, be abusive. You do not want someone to be abusive to your AI as well. I know AI is not a human, but then, in certain cases, this has happened in the past. People did create AI, machine learning based tools, which were interacting with the humans, and human input, they were learning from humans, and, human inputs could uh, impact the way they were working. So it's very important to have filters to what goes into AI, what comes out of it, so that you have some ethical standards, and at the same time you have some legal regulations on what kind of data can go in and what kind of data can come out of the model that you have. The accountability framework should be clearly defined, and it should provide a means for monitoring and addressing any ethical or legal concerns that arise during the development and the development of AI systems. So basically, what this slide is talking about is accountability. Have a framework. Framework is a set of rules. Follow them. Have your own guidelines. Do not go beyond them. Do not do something which should not be done. Now, I'm going to talk about two definitions which are required to understand the further slides. So the first is deep learning. Again, this is not something which is required. This slide and the next slide is not required for the certification, but I try to simplify them and add two lines of definitions in the morning, because I was just going through the slides and I realized talking about deep learning and you know not sharing the definition of it is not fair. So looking at the definition of deep learning, it is a subset of ML that involves the use of neural network with multiple layers to learn and make predictions from complex data. It has been applied successfully in areas such as computer vision and speech recognition. So in simple words, it is a subset of ML. So, deep learning is just a subset of ML, which uses neural networks. So now the next question is, what is a neural network? So a neural network is a computational model inspired by the structure and function of biological neurons. It consists of interconnected processing units, artificial neurons that work together to solve complex problems. Neural networks have been applied in a variety of fields, including image recognition, natural language processing, and self-driving cars. I won't go too deep into this because, again, that's not the main topic that we're trying to highlight today. But what we should be aware about, that when we talk about neural networks, they are networks that are inspired from human neurons. So a lot of biology has been studied, and the way humans function to solve a complex problem, you have multiple neurons working together neural network is something, it is inspired using humans and put in the same concept is used to solve complex problems. What you need to know is neural networks is a computation technique. It's a computational model which is used by deep learning, and deep learning is a subset of ML. And deep learning is used for computer vision, speech recognition, and NLP. And self-driving is obviously something similar. Here comes the part which many of us have been waiting for. This is the new addition to the certification, which is generative AI. So this was not there previously, but is now a part of the exam. So this is what makes this course, totally updated. Coming in fresh is generative AI. So OpenAI models are a collection of generative AI models that produce new content based on what is described in the input. So I think this should answer your question, Steve. If you compare generative AI to a bot service is very confined to what you teach it. So if you teach it, let's say ABC XYZ, it can only answer ABC XYZ. It is not going to have the capability to produce something new. Whereas when you talk about generative AI, so like ChatGPT is an example of generative AI. So OpenAI models, OpenAI is it's available. It is a set of model and collections of generative AI models that produce new content based on what is described in the input, such as ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is not giving you some copied content. I'm quite sure many of you have experienced this in the past, might have seen ChatGPT somewhere or the other. For those of you who haven't, let me quickly open it on my screen. And there's a lot of history on my screen, so let me just, remove that up before I can show you something new. So just give me a minute. I'm just clearing my previous sessions of ChatGPT. I want a fresh screen. Perfect. So we'll come back to Zoom. So you can see my screen, right? Now this is what is ChatGPT, which is using OpenAI. ChatGPT is the product. OpenAI is the technology. So ChatGPT is one of the products. There are multiple products that are built on top of OpenAI, which I'll talk about in a while. And this is generative AI because it is generating something from the scratch. So I'm going to show this to you. For example, so something I wrote and then it generated some code for me. So this is generative, right? And I could give it a totally new case. And I'll tell you specifically why did I use this example. I'm just going to come to that in a bit. Just stay connected because again, this is something new which has been added in the certification. So you can see this is generative, right? It generated something for us. It explained something for us. It's not just rule-based AI previously was you have the data, dependent upon that data, you're just giving back a response. So you're not having anything new that is being created. Let's say if I want to write a question like, so you see, it is generating a customized thing for me. And now let's say if I want to be, let's say if I wanted to be in less than 100 words or less than 50 words. So it's keeping the context alive. Words, I had to say words, I accidentally wrote. See, it did that. So I welcome participants to the Azure AI-900 workshop, and I'm available to help with any questions related to Azure AI-900. Now, let's say I can say explain open AI in 100 words. And then we can see it in action. So it's going to generate a response for us. So OpenAI is an artificial intelligence research lab founded in 2015 by a group of tech leaders, including Elon Musk and Sam Altman. OpenAI's mission is to create safe and beneficial AI systems that can improve people's life. Okay. Who owns OpenAI currently? Okay, that is diplomatic. So, okay, so you can see. So it's not about owning as they put it forward. I'm just going to use what, this presented to us. So Microsoft is one of the major investors in OpenAI, having announced a $1 billion investment in the company in 2019 as a part of the investment, blah, blah, blah. So, a lot of marketing stuff. I do not want to go into that. But basically, you can see I can talk to this about anything. I can generate code with it. And why did I generate code? I'm going to talk about that because that's important for our certification. Let me come back to generative AI. So OpenAI models are so now understand this that the two things. OpenAI is the technology, and OpenAI is also a name of the company that has ChatGPT. So not to get confused with that, I'll talk about that later, tomorrow maybe. So OpenAI models are a collection of generative AI models that produce new content based on what is described in the input, such as ChatGPT. So we give it an input, it analyzes the input that we given, and then it generates fresh content. By fresh content, I mean I could, ask it to reiterate, I could ask it to create a speech for me, I could ask it to create an email, I could even ask it to do my homework. Now, I'm not in college anymore. It's been quite a few years now, but let's say if I had to do it, I could do it. That's what is generative AI. And if there's a question on generative AI, you need to know there are open AI models, which are a collection of generative AI models that produce new content. Generative AI models are a subset of deep learning models that can produce new content based on the input. This is why we wanted to know what is deep learning. So please understand, we have neural networks, which are used, which are inspired by human brain. Using that, we use deep neural networking is used in deep learning, and deep learning is what is used in creating something as generative AI. AI imitates human behavior while machine learning models take in data to make predictions. So this is the difference. AI is imitating the behavior of a human, and machine learning is taking in data to make predictions. So it is predicting that, okay, if I have data for the past 100 years, I think this is what is going to happen the next year. So that is prediction. That is what happens using deep learning. Deep learning models use artificial neural networks to solve more complex problems. Azure AI service are built on deep learning model. So the services that we use in Azure, they are built on deep learning. So this is what it is. You have artificial intelligence, the subset is machine learning. In machine learning, you have deep learning, and using deep learning, you work on generative AI. So these are the layers, the underlying. In general, you call all of this artificial intelligence because the computer is being intelligent. Machine learning because it is having some data, it is making some predictions based upon that data, on what we should answer, how we should answer it, and stuff. Deep learning is more specific because it is using neural networks. So a greater enhancement over machine learning. And then using deep learning, you can use something like generative AI, which is generating something from the scratch. Now, this is important. This is Azure OpenAI. So please look at this. This is something new. So Microsoft has partnered with OpenAI to create Azure OpenAI service, which combines Azure's infrastructure and security with Azure's OpenAI generative AI model capabilities. Please look at this very, very carefully. It is very new, something very much in demand in the industry, very much in demand in the exam as well. Azure is Microsoft, right? It's backed by Microsoft. So obviously the infrastructure is humongous, and at the same time it is secure. So it's using Azure safety and infra along with OpenAI's generative AI model. So generative AI is where they're creating in data for you, which is like a human interactive model. It supports various AI workloads, including NLP, computer vision, anomaly detection, knowledge mining. You could do all of it from OpenAI. Now, OpenAI is not just limited to ChatGPT. Let me tell you, there are other applications of OpenAI where you could create images, you could do computer vision, you could do some analysis, you can, study the input that is coming in, you could do anomaly detection, and a lot more. Now, Azure Cognitive Services and OpenAI Service have overlapping capabilities, but OpenAI may be more beneficial for highly customized generative models or exploratory research. So for something that has not been discovered, so based on past learnings, finding what is already discovered is something which AI had been doing till now, but with OpenAI, it is predicted a lot of jobs are going to get disruptive. Uh, Again, up to debate because more jobs will get created for people who will have to work on OpenAI, but then less jobs for people doing the conventional job because OpenAI can replace you. For example, if I ask it to write 1,000 lines code for creating a website, I'm not sure how many of you know that ChatGPT 4 is here. I was just talking to my brother yesterday, and he showed me around because he stays connected a lot. I hardly get some time to read the news. With ChatGPT 4, you can create interactive web designs. It is going to do everything for you. You just give it a command, and it's going to do everything for you. So, uh, I would say AI is getting better, but there will still be a lot of human interaction that will be required. At the end of the day, humans do need to read through it. Humans do need to make sure that it is not overpowering and the content is right. So, but yes, fewer humans can do the task now because AI will be there to assist them with the redundancy. Next is OpenAI's natural language capability. So OpenAI's language models are trained on tokens and mapped into vectors for machine learning. GPT models are used for natural language generation and can perform tasks like summarizing, classification, translation, and question answering. So this is what we are using, right? The GPT model. So GPT is used for natural language generation. So till now we were studying about NLP, natural language processing, and now we talk about natural language generation. If I enter something over here, it is understanding my context. I'll give the same example. You see, sometimes it can get slow. Obviously, I'm using the free version, so I'm not expecting it to be the best, but yeah. So you see, 5 plus 5, the result of 5 plus 5 is 10. 5 and the symbol plus 5, the result of 5 plus 5 is 10. And then what is 5 plus 5? So what I'm entering is it needs to understand my language, so it's doing natural language processing, but at the same time, it's generating a result for me, which is different, which is not the same every time, and hence this is natural language generation. Does everyone understand that? When we pass in the data, that is natural language processing to read it. Then it does the computation and it gives back the response. So when the AI is generating text for us, that is natural language generation. Make sense? Give me a thumbs up. I know a lot of new stuff for a lot of us. Okay. So now I see people coming back, people becoming active, something interesting going on. So that's kind of nice. Okay. So let's say the reason why I came to this, let me show you something. Do you see this is so amazing? This is actually disruptive because it actually is creating HTML for me. It is creating the backend for me. All I got to do is I just need to use this. The moment I use it, it's also giving me an explanation of what each and everything is doing. So it's telling me, it'll print the error, it will show the form. Let me just add stuff to it. So I add some CSS design. It is making it better. I'll show you both the outputs to show what's the difference and what the user needs to do now. So let me first copy what it previously generated for me, and I'll be pasting it in a in a test file. So yeah, it is generating the second one. I'll just wait for it to finish. And obviously, I've not connected any database, so I'm not going to hit the submit and do things. What I'm trying to show you guys is with AI, this now I think someone asked me this question quite some time ago. Is AI 900 an important certification? The simple answer is the AI 900 is just the fundamentals. With the advancement in technology, it's not long before everyone will have to learn it in some form of the other. So this has happened in the past when people started learning a lot of Python, a lot of data science because it was easy. But now I think AI could be one of those things where people would want to learn it. It will be very, very beneficial. And with this technology coming forward, AI 900 being one of the easiest certifications, I would recommend everyone to do it. I mean, if I have a 16-year-old coming to me and asking what should be the first certification I do, my first answer will be start preparing for AI 900. It's not super difficult, and it is something which might be helpful in one form or the other in the future. Now, to show you what it created for me, I have to open something like Visual Studio Code. Let me do that. Give me a minute. I'm just going to paste the code to show you, what it created for us. So, new file. Let's save this as this PC. Let me show this to all of you. So you see, this is what it created for us for the very first time. The second command I gave it was that please, do something better in terms of the design, because I could see that there was no design involved. So the second file it created for us, just give me a minute. So this was the first one. The second one it did for us was this. And trust me, this does not look bad. By the click of a button without even having a paid account, it created a login form for me. That's not bad at all. It kind of looks nice. And this is the reason we need to learn the technology, because again, if this is what people were making in their entire day, let's say you're a new junior developer who's just started coding today, and this is the website, this is the form that you were planning to make for today. AI did it for you. Now obviously I see there are some restrictions, some limitations, like there's some space on the right that should, we should be having some padding, we should be having some margin. We do not have that. But at the same time, I would say this is not bad. If it would have created just this, I would have thought, this is too basic. But if I look at this kind of looks interesting to me. Uh, let's say, let me add something else, like make it a very peculiar request. And it did actually work. I mean, I wrote make it center aligned vertically, and then it's saying, okay, to use this, you have to use something like a flex box. And look at the fact it's not just limited to the design or the HTML, it is also writing the backend code for me, which obviously I'm not using at this stage, but it is a all in all thing that it has done. It set the username as my username and password as my password. So let's say if I enter something wrong, it is also giving an error message. If I enter the right values that have been stored in the code, so like my username, and obviously I could go and change them, my password. So it is getting logged into dashboard.php, though there's nothing like dashboard.php existing right now. I could ask it to create one for me, but yeah, that'll be too much. So this is the third version that I've created, and this is the last thing that I'm going to show you guys. In terms of ChatGPT, we'll come back to the certification. The only reason we are discussing this or we're talking about this is to understand the importance. Yeah, there you go. Even better, right? So you could ask it to customize it for you, and it's going to do it within less than a minute, and that to the free version. So now the question is, why would people not want to use a technology of this sort? And because there was a lot of demand, a lot of people wanted to use it. That's why we see that Azure has this integrated. So let me come back to our slides. So OpenAI's natural language capabilities include, OpenAI model are trained on tokens and mapped in vectors for machine learning. GPT models are used for natural language generation, where you can have summarizing, translation, question answering, classification. Generated AI response for these models are best guesses and may not always be accurate, like we saw. We had this, form where we had some space on the left. Oh, sorry. So this is what our form looked like. We had some spacing on the left, but on the right, it was just touching the edge. So it's not perfect. It's the best guess we could say, but it's not bad as well. So it's important for us to understand how it works. Moving forward, ChatGPT is a chatbot built on GPT 3.5 model that can be customized and integrated into different applications and user interfaces. So ChatGPT, you do not need to limit to what we were using right now. We can also be using it within our own services. I'll give you an example. I went for a trip some time back and I wanted the itinerary to be made. So I went to ChatGPT and I told ChatGPT, hey, I am planning to go to so and so place. I have so and so days. I have my food preference as so. I want to try this cuisine. Can you please make an itinerary for me? It made a detailed itinerary for me. When I did not like it, I was like, please remove this. I am not, let's say a beach person, I'm a mountain person. So it's like, okay, where you're going, half a kilometer from, half an hour drive from there, there's a mountain, you can climb it, you can hike it, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of companies, a lot of organizations are using the OpenAI chat GPT, GPT model in the background, and they are creating their own user interfaces. So they are creating their own websites where they're charging people for the itineraries that they're creating for them. But at the end of the day, the bot is doing that for you. So you could have an aggregator based model where you could be taking in information from the user. You could be doing some analysis using a chatbot, and then the AI will be solving the problems. The AI is going to provide the service to your customers. So you could decide how your UI is going to look like, but AI could be helping you with a lot of that. Now, what we just saw was OpenAI's code generation capabilities. This is important from exam point of view. This is straight away from the exam documentation, and that's why I showed you, because ChatGPT is using OpenAI. So I wanted to show that uh, it has the capability to create code and it has the capability to customize the code. So how is that? How is that possible? It is possible because OpenAI's Codex model family is proficient in over a dozen of programming languages, which include Python is the most capable language, but you have other languages like Java, PHP, and .NET, C Sharp. You could use a lot. So it has a lot of languages where it can write code for you. So OpenAI is integrated to Codex model. You could be using this individually, but ChatGPT comes with this, so that's why it's generating code for you. So for example, again, I think I'm doing a lot of practicals in here, but I think it's fine. So let me use. Okay, so see, it's built on GPT 3.5. The model is based on transformer architecture, uses deep neural networks to generate text and perform a wide range of natural language processing tasks such as translation, question answering, text completion, among others. So let me ask it. Uh, So this particular version is not using it, but OpenAI's version, which we will discuss with Azure, that uses the Codex model. This might be using another version, and that's why it's best to ask it. You can go to it, you can ask it questions, and it's going to answer that for you. So again, as I'm saying, the version I'm using is a free version. The version that I'm using is not paid. The version is, you know, Chat GPT. It is not the Azure AI version. So things are very different. So when this model was deployed, I think in September 2021, I did not use Codex model and it has not been released yet. However, Codex is a new language model developed by OpenAI that is designed to generate code from natural language description, and it is based on GPT architecture. It is possible that I may have been updated since my cutoff date to incorporate Codex or related models, but I cannot confirm this without further information. So yeah, it's not sure about it, but when we talk about this example specifically to Azure OpenAI capabilities, we can see that Azure's documentation clearly states that the OpenAI is using the Codex model. It can create functions for us. It can generate code from natural language prompts, suggest ways to complete code functions. It can do unit tests for us. For example, we have some code that we have written. We wanted to test it, write some unit tests to be sure that if it's working fine or not. We want the summary of a function so that a new person in an organization can understand it. They can explain SQL queries. So all those functionalities are there. They are present. Just a sec. Give me a sec, guys. Yeah. I'm so sorry. So coming back, so this can explain the code to you. This can write some code for you. Uh, Bing AI is more relevant as it is Microsoft's adaptation of ChatGPT. So, Jatin, I would say Microsoft's adaptation is a little different here. Reason being, when you talk about Azure, as I'll be talking in the further slides, Azure has partnered with them. Azure has got OpenAI into the system. You cannot be using the services directly, but when you use Azure OpenAI, uh, which is which is the same technology as ChatGPT is using, I mean, it's not a public thing that you cannot just go and start using it. You need to send Microsoft an email. You need to have some long-term association with them, and that only then you'll be allowed to use it. It's going to be a B2B contract, but once you get that sorted, you would be able to make changes. You would be able to, you know, you would be able to leverage the I would say you would be able to leverage the upsides of OpenAI into the code that you write or into the solutions that you build. I'll just finish the slide before I answer your question, Ankit. So this could be used to generate unit tests, summarize the functions, explain SQL queries, and convert from one programming to other. So I could give some code in Python and say, write an equivalent in Java. Developers can also specify libraries or language specific tags to interact with Codex. So this is like a more enhanced version. One thing, one thing over here. AI is not fully trusted, and for that reason, a lot of organizations do not allow this to happen. In fact, in many of my known, friends' organization, in fact, even in my organization, I cannot go and copy paste code and open AI. It's not allowed. So that is data loss prevention. So depending upon your use case, you might use it, you might not use it, and that's why, especially Chat GPT is a very public thing. It is something which is, not very reliable. It's not something that comes with a subscription. You're just testing it out. But in the real world, there are, other things that are being used. I'm just finding out the page. I think it's going to come in the next slide where we'll talk about how to get the contract sorted and stuff. Ankit, you can ask me your question now.
Yeah, hi, Jewish. So I had like I'm a bit confused here. So so OpenAI, like it's not offered as a software as a service, right? When we use Azure services, we can only use the code base, like to write the codes. But like as a customer, we cannot there'll be no portal similar to ChatGPT inside Azure.
No, there's nothing similar to Chat GPT inside Azure. Chat GPT is a software, which we are interacting with.
Correct.
It is
Yeah.
using OpenAI, but that is for the users to test.
Yeah.
Now, think of it from this way. A lot of people are communicating with ChatGPT. What are they getting in return? They're getting, a lot of user data is being generated for them. When we interact with ChatGPT, we get the benefit that oh wow, this looks good. But at the same time, their model is learning more and more about us.
Correct.
The
Yeah.
more conversation we carry, the more data they gather from us. Now, for instance, if I had an active session with the ChatGPT now knows that I was flying to this place. I was flying at this time. I am not sure what they do to my data, but my data has been exposed to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
So
it's more like a platform as a
yeah,
service.
no.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is SaaS. We
Sorry.
cannot use it, right? It's software
Yeah.
as a service.
No, no.
We are
Sorry.
just
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. I mentioned. Sorry. I was trying to refer to OpenAI code.
Okay. So
Yep.
OpenAI, when we consume Azure OpenAI, once we get the permission from Microsoft, once we get the documentation sorted from Microsoft, if they give us the permission, we can build our applications on top of their models. So I would like to think of it like we are not consuming their software. We are more of using their API, and we'll be paying them for the number of times we use it. So API
Okay.
integration, model integration is what we get when we use OpenAI on Azure.
Okay. Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Most welcome. Okay. Next is OpenAI's image generation capabilities. So OpenAI can generate images for us. Uh, just a sec. So sorry. So OpenAI can generate images for us. So DALI is an image generation model developed by OpenAI. So OpenAI has multiple, models. So Codex is one. ChatGPT is one of the products that people are using very frequently. Similarly, we have DALI. So if we use DALI, we can give a description of what we want, and it can create some images for us, like some avatars for us. It can create, edit, and generate variations of images using text or image prompts. Now, I think this is more of related to something which got very popular a few months ago, where people were creating their avatars using their images. So they used to upload an image. There used to be an application. It used to charge some amount of money, and it used to take like 30 images. It used to create avatars for you, and people were posting them. So got really famous. So uh, that is the kind of capability that OpenAI we're trying to talk about over here. DALI has the ability to change styles, add or remove items, generate new content, to produce creative variations of existing images. So what we are looking at right now is the first thing is it can generate code for us. Second thing is it can generate images for us. Uh, Moving on to the policies. Now, this is very important. This is what I was talking about in the past. So ethical considerations must be taken into account when using Azure OpenAI's natural language models. So understand this. Azure OpenAI has natural language models which they allow you to use to integrate. ChatGPT is a software solution. As a human, you can go and type in, your applications are not communicating with that, right? So that things become very different. So if you want to do that, you could do that via Azure's OpenAI. Microsoft AI principles of fairness, reliability, and safety, privacy and security, inclusiveness and accountability, and transparency should guide the use of OpenAI. So they are very clear about it on what they want. Access to Azure OpenAI is limited, and customers must submit a registration form for initial experimentation and approval for production use, as well as additional registration for modifying content filters and abuse monitoring. So OpenAI comes with some content filters, some abuse monitoring. You cannot just go and override it until unless you have a very well reason to do so. So this is the same thing that I was talking about. And I think, Ankit, this should answer your question as well. So access to the platform, access to the models on Azure OpenAI, it is limited. So you need to go submit a form. They will evaluate you on a case by case basis. This is still not a public service because again, if someone is using it in production, they're still the early adapter, right? This is very new. It's not something which was heard of a few years back. I know they're building it since quite a few years now, but I would say the popularity I'll say 3 months. It's become really famous in the last 3 months. Prior to that, the world did not know it, right? Till we had Chat GPT, it was not so popular as it is right now. So access to the OpenAI is limited, and you must submit a form. If you are approved, only then you will be able to use it. Responsible AI principles guide Microsoft's transparency notes on Azure OpenAI, which provide guides for ethical and responsible use of this platform. So again, you have whatever rules we talked about in the beginning, you have to consider all of them when you're using this, and then yes, you can go ahead and use them. So I think this should make sense for all of us. Let's see where we are in terms of the progress. I think we're doing a pretty decent job. We have come to the beginning of the machine learning module. That is all in all about AI. We did do quite a few things. We did look into quite a few applications of OpenAI. And as I'm saying, the certification is a fundamental certification. They expect you to know the terminology. They do not expect you to know the code and how to write code, how to get things sorted. So once you go through this entire presentation once by yourself, you would be at a very good spot and you'll be prepared for the certification. We have another 44 minutes. So I'm going to cover a few slides on machine learning, and then maybe we could start looking into the practical that I was doing in the morning. So and then we could open the floor for questions, queries, or doubts that anyone might have. So coming back to machine learning. So machine learning uses mathematics and statistics to create models that can predict unknown values. For example, I do not know if it is going to rain tomorrow or not. How can I know if it's going to rain tomorrow or not? By looking at some historical data. That, okay, 5 years back from today, this is what the temperature was, this is what the weather was, so this is the probability it might rain. But hey, this is what happened last year, but it did not rain, so I think it might not rain. So considering multiple factors and then coming to uh, a conclusion is what machine learning does. It uses statistics and maths. So stats is the values and maths is the calculation that it does, and it comes to a conclusion. The technique involves defining a function that operates on features to calculate a predicted label. So this is like, what is the probability? Now, once I do the practical again that I was showing before the break, it's going to make a lot of sense for all of us now. There are two general approaches to machine learning, supervised and unsupervised. Supervised is you tell it. For example, you are controlling it that, hey, model, this is a phone. Hey, model, this is another phone. Hey, model, this is earphones. This is something like, a keychain. And then this is paper. So this is supervised, right? You're telling it, you are controlling it. You decide what the input is, and then you teach it. So it is in your control. Unsupervised, you leave it in the wild. You are like, hey, explore the internet. So you do not have control over it. And this is where it learns more, but it becomes very, very dangerous. Please understand this why. If you have an unsupervised model, you cannot control what it learns. The problem in this case will be if it starts learning. This is where AI can become, you need to have control over AI. If you totally leave it unsupervised, the problem with that is it can learn stuff that it might not have to, because there's a lot of content out there. So there's so much of information on the internet. There's so much of information. Let's say if it's a company specific product, there's so much of information on the intranet. You have to be very, very careful when you're working with unsupervised learning, because your results are not expected. It's like if you are monitoring something regularly, if it is supervised, you know what is being trained. So there's a higher probability of safety, but then there is limited learning. This is what you taught, it knows this. In unsupervised, it can learn stuff on itself. You're not controlling it at each and every step. But the problem with unsupervised is that it can learn a lot of stuff on its own, right? So that means if it learns something which it is not supposed to, you might be in trouble. So it makes sense to keep a check. I would not say I'm against unsupervised learning, but unsupervised learning should have regular audits. You should be having surprise checks to be sure that your AI is not, it's not starting to do something which it should not, right? And that's when AI can get dangerous. I I don't remember who was talking about this. I did get this comment in the workshop in session 3 that AWS Lex was talking to itself or functions was talking to itself. There was some service that started talking to itself. So I'm not so sure how true that was, but yes, at certain point of time, if you use unsupervised machine learning and you leave the data in the wild, your ML might learn something which it should not. It might become dangerous. So it's very important to audit it if it is in an unsupervised mode. Within these approaches, there are different types of tasks such as regression, classification, and clustering. Very important for exam. Definitely a few questions. They will ask you what is regression, what is classification, what is clustering. It is always asked multiple questions on this. So I'm going to teach you this in the next slides. The specific operations performed by the function is determined by the type of model and algorithm used to train it. The first service, okay. So when we talk about Azure machine learning, you need to know about two things, the questions that will come in the exam. First is going to be about what are the services. So if you look at computer vision, we did see certain services. When we were talking about NLP, we did see we had speech service, translate service. So those services, you need to know the name at Azure Speech, Azure Translate, Azure Bot Service. Similarly, in machine learning, there are a handful of services. Just remember for any certification that you are giving, when you got the invite, I sent you certain names of the services that will be covered, right? Know about what those services do because it's a fundamental certification. They will ask you, they want you to know about their product. Their goal is to, for you to understand what the product does. So if you see the term Azure Machine Learning Studio, you should know what that thing is doing. Obviously, it's a service, so we'll read what it does. So if it's Azure, basically, I'm telling you for the exam point, they are going to test you upon if you know what the name of the service is, and if you know the name, what is the task that that service is doing for you. These two things are very, very important. If you know them, I think we'll be at a good spot. Other than that, you need to know stuff which I'm specifically asking you to. For example, in machine learning, they are definitely going to be asking questions about regression, classification, and clustering. So they'll be asking you, these are three types of tasks. So will you use a regression model? Will you use a classification model? Will you use a clustering model? So a lot of that stuff is going to come in a bit to us. So starting with the first service, that is Azure Machine Learning Studio. So Azure Machine Learning is a cloud-based service that simplifies the preparation, training, and deployment of machine learning models. It helps data scientists increase the efficiency by automating time-consuming tasks and enables the use of cloud-based compute resources. So obviously, since it's in Azure, it is going to be cloud-based. We do not have to do all the tasks. A lot of redundancy is, a lot of redundant tasks are taken care by the service itself. And the service includes an Azure machine learning workspace and Studio Web Portal for managing data, compute resources, code, model, and artifacts. The compute resources include compute instances, compute cluster, interface clusters, and attached compute. What you need to know from exam standpoint of view for this, they have a service called as Machine Learning Studio. It is not difficult. It is a straightforward service. It is a graphical user interface. You go to the studio, you drag and drop the services, and you can meet, you drag and drop the resources, not the services, sorry. You drag and drop the resources and you start consuming them. The question is, what are the resources that you could be working upon while you're working on Machine Learning Studio? That includes the compute instance, compute cluster, interface cluster, attached compute, simple stuff. You don't need to know what each one of them is. Again, that's beyond the scope. It's pretty straightforward. The next is Designer, that is Azure Machine Learning Designer. Uh, so Azure Machine Learning Studio provides a virtual interface. Please understand this carefully. Machine Learning Studio is the service. Designer is a part of the studio. Make sense? Give me a thumbs up. There's a service called Azure Machine Learning Studio, and then the part of the studio is the designer. Straightforward. So if they ask you in the questions, which service does, where you can use drag and drop AI. So the answer to that is Azure Machine Learning Studio, not Designer. Designer is an interface of the machine learning studio. And using this, you can, you can author regression machine learning models. So the designer interface uses a drag and drop approach to create pipelines, which are used to organize, manage, and reuse machine learning workflows. Components are used as building blocks in a pipeline, and data assets can be created from local files, a data web file, a data store, web files, and open data sets. Jobs enables systematic tracking for machine learning, experimentation, and workflows, and the status of a pipeline job can be assessed using the submitted jobs job tab on the pane. All jobs can be viewed on jobs pane. So basically, what's happening is they have a UI. What they have is they have a UI. You can go, you can drag and drop, you can decide what resource you want. Then you can tell it that this is the kind of model that I am looking to train. And then it is going to do the task for you. So we have a practical plan for this. I would want to do it tomorrow morning because we would have to share files with you for the model, because we'll need some data set. We'll do some real data set creation where I'll give some files. We'll all have our own, like machine learning models trained, and then we are going to test against it. The only thing with this is you need to have the files beforehand. Did not send them out yesterday because I thought, because you can never predict how many questions are going to be coming your way. So today we did not have a lot of questions coming in, and that's why you know we are here already. But this is something which I'd planned that I'll start tomorrow, and we'll have a practical. But in the time that we have right now, practical is obviously not possible because sharing everything with all of you and then getting all of you to start it, it's not the right thing. But tomorrow when we start sharp at 10, I would want all of you to download the content. Then the email that you'll get tonight, or maybe I'm planning to request Ruchika to send the email tomorrow, because a lot of people tend to miss the event. So please do not email again and again. You'll get the link for tomorrow itself. So 10 a.m. is the event time. I'll try and get them to send the link around 9 a.m. so that everyone's active and everyone has the downloaded file that they need to. So you can log in around 9:45. It'll be a small download. Just do that. Set up your Azure account. If you don't know it, we'll give you the link to the first video. We did that. So just get the setup done, use that, and we'll be at a good spot. Okay. And that's when we'll do the practical. I saw someone's hand was raised. Was it about the practical?
Yes, since like both designer and studio are like the description is quite similar, so I thought like if you
Sure.
could like show the
Sure,
services.
sure, sure. So basically, studio is the service. Designer is a part of the studio. So if you see, Azure Machine Learning Studio provides a virtualized interface called the designer. It is more of like a subset. And this is very frequent in cloud. So maybe I could just go log in and briefly show it to you right now to avoid that. So so it's doing some validation. So it's creating a resource for machine learning services. This is where we see a lot of other options. So it did create the storage account, which needs, where we're going to store the data. It did create a key vault from where our resources will be accessing the keys. So there we are. And
So is it that this screen is the studio?
no, it's getting deployed. We'll have to wait a bit.
Okay.
Uh, you can see the screen, right?
Yes.
So this is the studio, and then we have designer, which we could use. And now if I go beyond, it'll be, I mean, I want to leave this for tomorrow, so I'm not going to go in a lot of detail, but just to give you a broad view, studio is the service and then designer is the part of the service. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
gotcha.
designer is to visually, for example, within the service, I could be using the components and, I could be working with the data and stuff. I could have my models trained, have the endpoints done, have the compute resources created. But at the same time, if I want to visualize everything, I do not want to go and manually set everything up. I want to do drag and drop, and I want to have a picture of how the design is going to look like. We could be doing that using the designer. Make
Thanks.
sense?
Thanks.
Okay. So again, as I said, this will be way too deep, so not spending a lot of time on it. But yes, uh, at the top you can see this is the studio. Designer is a part of the studio. I could go home. I could just start a notebook where we can, start writing some code in Python. We could uh, start doing some drag and drop here. So we can choose one of the starting points that we have, the pre-built, or we could create one custom. And once we create a custom one, it will ask us that, what is it that you want to add? How do you want to add it? How do you want to design it? Some tutorial and stuff going around. And then we could submit it and validate it. So let's
Uh,
say,
Following up on that, so I saw there was a notebook option and a designer option. Uh, is it that within notebook you can create like Jupyter notebooks and do it everything like in Python, and designer is the drag and drop alternative for that?
uh, so basically, you could, that is kind of what it is. So in notebook, you could be writing some Python code where, you could start working and you could start seeing the output. In terms of designer, it is how you are going to deploy the model. So this is how you are going to code your model. This is how you will be deploying it. For example, once you're done training it, once your model is good to go, you might want two VMs to hold it, three VMs to hold it, four VMs to hold it. You might want a load balancer. How that would be configured, what resource will be used, what's going to be the data set, how would you be having the input, how would be you be giving the output? That's all part of the designer. So this is more of the dev side. This is more of the deploy side. Make sense, Jatin?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Most welcome. Honestly, all of this is not required, but depending upon the number of participants. So today, we had the scope. We did not get a lot of questions, so I just took that. But again, more on it coming tomorrow. So something for sure that we'll discuss is uh, the practical that we have on the computer vision service and the custom vision, to be exact. Like we'll be having a custom model for studio, for custom machine learning, for designer. I'm not sure if we'll have the time, but if we have something, if not with everyone, I might do something and I might show it to all of you so that you can see it happen, like a small demonstration. I won't say it'll be a practical session, but I can show a small demonstration. And since it will be on the video, if someone wants to replicate that, you could do that on your own by looking at the video. But for the custom vision plan that we have tomorrow, we will all do it together. So don't worry for that. Custom vision is one practical which I have planned for all of us. Okay. Going forward, we have Azure automated machine learning, which we could just see on the studio as well. So Azure machine learning includes automated machine learning capabilities that use cloud compute to find the best performing supervised model for your data. So let's say if we have some data, uh, for the attendance sheet, I'll just make sure that you guys have it. Just a sec. So for those of you who did not fill the attendance sheet, uh, I'm sharing that out in the chat. Please fill that up whenever you have some time. Maybe after we are done discussing all of this. Another, I think, 15 minutes of discussion, and then we'll be good to go for today. So Azure automated machine learning is when you do not want to do a lot of work, you have some data, and Azure can recommend that this works best as per your data. So let's say uh, you have a lot of, like, let's say they have a model on cars, like detecting cars, and then you're doing a lot of analysis around cars. So you could be using something automated if you do not want to do things on your own. If you do not want to give the test data, you do not want to supply it with a lot of information, a lot of stuff could be automated as well. It makes it easier to choose the right algorithm and adjust the setting without requiring advanced data science or programming skills. So you can just decide what data points you're looking for, how things work out. Again, I know fundamental certification, everyone wants to know the details, but you know, these services are huge. If you start discussing them, they can have a day dedicated to them itself. So that's why just touch basing on the services. If you read the term automated ML, it has automatic, models that you could use. Uh, just okay. So I think this will be the last three slides that we'll cover today. We'll cover all the way till regression, and then classification will continue tomorrow. So just lend me your ears for another 15 minutes. Jatin, yes, automated machine learning is pre-trained. So it is pre-trained. At the same time, you can also have customizations around it. So if we go back to this, let's read it one more time. Azure machine Azure machine learning includes automated machine learning capabilities that use cloud compute to find the best performing supervised machine learning model for your data. So they already have, they have the model, they'll do it for you. It makes it easier for you to choose the right algorithm. So you can, they have a list of algorithms. So basically they have a list, you could be choosing what works best for your use case. And then, the job is done. Moving forward for AutoML process, automated machine learning in Azure machine learning follows the same steps as traditional machine learning. You have to prepare the data, you have to train a model, you have to evaluate the performance, and you have to deploy a a predicted service. The data for training and operations is encapsulated in a dataset object, and the automated machine learning supports supervised learning models for classification, regression, and time series forecasting. Users can select configuration for the primary metric model, exit the criteria, and the concurrency limits. The mesh model is identified based on the evaluation metric specified, and the residual histogram and predict versus true chart are used to evaluate model performance. Finally, the best performing model can be deployed as a service in Azure container instance or Kubernetes services. So basically, in simple words, I would say that automated machine learning is not about using pre-trained exactly. Instead, it is a process of automating the end-to-end workflow. So for data preparation feature, for model selection, and for parameter tuning, you do not have to do all the steps on your own. It is going to recommend. So in terms of model selection, it is automated. In terms of data being supplied, no, data is supplied by you. That is something I think I missed in the last part. So just to clarify that the data is always supplied by you, but the model is, like you have a choice to choose from rather than writing something from the scratch. Answers your question, Jatin?
Yeah. Yeah, but again, this automated ML and AutoML are two similar stuff. Like, are these two separate services, or is this like automated ML is just concept and AutoML is a service to it?
So automated machine learning is also called as AutoML.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's just the short form. Okay. Uh, Now, basically, what I'm thinking is, so these three topics are important for the exam: regression, classification, and clustering. And by this time, we have reached kind of a threshold where I know we have covered quite a lot of content, and this is the time when people start to get tired. So I do not want to start a very new topic right now because it is kind of important for the certification. Considering the flow that we are following right now and the speed that we have, I am very positive that we'll be able to finish this well in time and we'll have ample of time for the practicals tomorrow as well. So for now, what we can do is I think we are good for the day. Just a sec. Let me be sure where we are. So we have covered about 40 slides out of 76. So we are almost halfway. So I think that's at a good spot. I'll just stop the recording.